What's up, y'all? Alvin here, and today I'm going to show you my two favorite bass leaders, one for floating lines, one for sinking lines, and I'm going to show you how to tie them because they're super easy. I tell the good jokes. All right, let's get into it. This first leader we're going to tie for fishing on a floating line. Now that could be with floating flies or with sinking flies. I usually like to keep my bass leaders at about 8 feet, so that's what we're going to start with. And we're going to use the 60-20-20 method. So that means that our total length of the leader is going to be 8 feet. So the butt section is going to be about 5 feet, and each section beyond that is going to be about 1.5 feet. So butt section, taper, then tippet. And like I said, we're keeping it super simple. We're going to go with 50-pound test for the butt section, so about 5 feet of that. Then we're going to go down to 35-pound test for the taper, about 1.5 feet of that. And then our tippet is going to be 20-pound test, and we're going to have about 1.5 feet of that. So I like to go pretty heavy with my leaders for bass. It helps deliver some of these larger flies, and it also lets me get flies back when they get snagged in the tree or underwater obstructions. And typically the bass are not going to be very leader shy. So if you've fly fish for bass with conventional tackle, you're probably not fishing with 20-pound test. Unless you're throwing braid, then maybe you may even have 50-pound test, but it's a smaller diameter. But that is one of the things I like about fly fishing for bass is you really can put a little bit heavier tackle out there and you tend to lose less fish, in my experience anyway. So there's only a couple of knots you need to know to make this leader. I will put a link up here to a bunch of knots, every knot that you need to know for fly fishing in a video that I made. Yeah, so all we're gonna need is a blooded knot and a perfection loop. So I'm not gonna measure this stuff. I just eyeball it, and that's just kind of how I do it. So 5 feet or so, like that. Then we'll clip it off of my 50-pound test. Now the reason I'm going with 50-pound test is just because that is close to the diameter of the fly lines I use most often. So a 6-weight fly line is really close to the diameter, and the diameter is actually more important than the pound test. So the diameter of this 50-pound test is 0.023 of an inch, which is fairly close to the tip of a 6-weight fly line, 6, 7, and 8, which is typically what I'm going to use. So first thing we're going to do is do a perfection loop in that butt section for a couple different reasons. You know, we're going to use a loop-to-loop connection, although I know that's blasphemy a lot of times using a loop-to-loop connection, but I've had really good luck with them, and they're just the easiest way to change flies. Need something to pull that loop tight with. Use my trusty pin. I'm going to clip it off nice and close. And we got our butt section. So I like to put the perfection loop on there just so I know which end I'm starting with. So that's going to be the butt section end that's going to get attached to the fly line. And then the next section is going to be where I'm going to put my taper or my 35-pound test. So just pull off approximately 1.5 feet, a 35-pound test. Clip that off. And we're gonna do a blood knot to attach those two. Like I said, there's a link to the blood knot in the description, as well as several other knots. All right, so we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4 turns. Should be plenty, especially with this heavier material. Then we'll do 4 turns on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another one of the nice things I like about bass fishing is this is much heavier material. So it's a lot easier to tie these knots than it would be with a lighter material. If I was trout fishing, I'd probably be using a surgeon's knot. All right, so you want to lube that stuff up before you tighten it. Pull evenly on both sides. You get something like that. And we'll go ahead and clip it off. Clip it nice and close. Now, if you wanted to get fancy, you could put some type of glue or something on that to make that connection a little bit smoother. But most of the time, you're not going to be pulling your leader up into the tip of your fly rod, or you shouldn't be anyway. All right, so one more section of 20-pound test. And we're just going to pull off. Once again, we're going to eyeball it about 1.5 feet. And once again, we're just doing this. The diameters are diameters that I like. And these are pretty close. So to tie the tippet on, I am going to just go ahead and use a surgeon's knot. I like to use a blood knot for the heavier materials. But on something like this, you can go ahead and use a surgeon's knot. And you are now ready to fish. So, throwing streamers, throwing poppers, this is what I would have on. Super cheap, super easy, super fast. All right, we got another leader. I'm going to show you here in a second. But if you made it this far, if this video is helping you out, you can help me out by giving the video a thumbs up, maybe subscribing to the channel, signing up for my email list so you can keep track of me outside of YouTube. And also, if you want some super detailed help with your fly fishing for bass, I got 48 years of experience, and I'm going to share it all in this online course, link in description. Check that out. All right, let's get back into it. Okay, so here's a little bonus tip for storing your leaders. Start with the tip, roll it up around your fingers until you get to the butt section. And then what you can do is just wrap that butt section around the rest of the leader. And this is how your leaders are going to come packaged. So to get the leader ready to use, the exact opposite thing. So there you go. No mess. All right, a little bit different formula for the sinking line, sink tip, sinking line leaders. We're going to go with an 80-20 formula, and we're going to cut the leader back to about 4 feet. Now, the reason you want a shorter leader for your sinking lines and your sinking tip lines is that the monofilament is not weighted, and if your fly is not pretty heavily weighted, what happens is your fly line will sink a lot faster than the leader and your fly, and the longer your leader is, the further that fly is in the water column in relation to the fly line. So if you want to get your fly down as quickly as possible, you want to make the leader shorter. Another thing to remember with these leaders for sinking and sink tip lines, most of the time you're dragging them along the bottom. So you're going to want a pretty stout leader. I will go ahead and use the 20-pound for my tippet, but if it's a lot of junk on the bottom, I've been known to go up to 35 and sometimes even 40 pound. Now you got to be careful because you do want to have something that will break. You know, a lot of times if you go heavier, what'll happen is you can actually straighten out the hook. You know, I guess that's better than losing the fly, but you don't want to break the tip off your fly line because you got 50-pound leader on there. So probably want to stay 30 pound and below. Okay, so for the sinking leader, we're going to go with just the 35 and the 20. So the sinking line is usually going to be a slightly smaller diameter than your floating line, so that's why we can get away with just using the 35 pound. And so like I said, we're doing 80-20, so we're doing about 3 feet of butt section and about 1 foot of tippet. So super easy there. We're going to clip off. There's our 3 feet of 30-pound test. We'll go ahead and put a perfection loop in that. And clip that off. Then we'll get us a foot of 20-pound, about like so. And since these materials are fairly close in diameter, we're just going to do surgeon's knot on these. Get it wet before we pull it tight. And you're ready to go. So I haven't bought any leaders specifically for bass fishing in a long time. I've been just tying them up like this and going for it. So I keep a bunch of extra spools of Tippet in the boat with me. And if I need to retie a leader while I'm out there, as you can see, it does not take very long. There you go. All right, so hopefully that helps somebody out there. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Like I said, if you really want to help me out, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to my YouTube. And if you really want to get some detailed information, you can sign up for that course, Bass on the Fly, link in description. Thanks for watching the video. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. And in the meantime, good luck on the water.